figuring out how to delay more user creation. So hopefully that'll be another start, and I can leverage Yahoo's CAPTCHA experts to take care of that side of it for me. I don't know if this one will be perfect either, but I'm optimistic. It seems like a good start. And who knows which adversaries are going to be able to attack which ones of these. We'll find out as we do it. And then the sixth one, just to demonstrate that we can get as complex as we want to on this, imagine some sort of reputation system. Find 12 people in China that you really trust and give them 100 bridge addresses each, and give them a bunch of little trust tokens. And then what they do is they say, I really trust my friend over here. I'm going to give him some of the bridge addresses. Now he can get to the internet too. And I'm going to give him some of these tokens. And imagine there's some database somewhere, and you show up with a token, and it gives you an account. And then these people are able to learn new bridges too. So you go to the database and you say, hey, here's my account. Can I learn some new bridges now? And if we like him, we'll talk about what that means later, then we give him some new bridges. And if we don't like him, then we say, sorry, you don't get any more bridges. Or we say, yes, certainly, here are some bridges that we know are blocked, jerk. So there are a lot of approaches we can use for that. So the idea is, how do we figure out if we like him? One answer is, if the addresses we gave him last time ended up blocked, that's a bad sign. Either he's the adversary and he blocked them, or he doesn't have very good friends because he gave them to somebody who ended up getting them blocked. So it's sort of complex. It gets pretty bad pretty quickly. How do we decide how to actually measure if he's a bad person? But I can certainly imagine working on this for a while and coming up with a design that would work for a few months, and maybe we'd have to fix it once China figured out how to break that one. But this is all an arms race. So it gets really messy really quickly. And then distribution strategies 7 and 8, I have no idea. But when bridges sign up to be in these public distribution strategies, we should keep these in reserve. We should keep a couple of them unused. We didn't tell them to anybody, because what if China breaks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all at once, and there are no bridges? And then there's a new media article that comes out in China saying, yeah, we took care of that Tor thing, it doesn't work anymore. And it's true, we don't have any bridges, there's nothing to give anybody that isn't already blocked. That would be really bad. So the idea is we have these extra, maybe 20% of the bridges that are signed up, and we don't give them to anybody, and if the worst happens and all these others are broken, then we think really quickly and come up with some strategies that aren't so easy to break, and now we have some bridges available that we can start using immediately for those. So one of my questions for you is, what other strategies should we use here? What other scarce resources for an attacker? Don't necessarily think just of China. Think of Symantec, for example. They might want to not let Tor work. What sort of scarce resources should we measure to try to have as much diversity as possible in terms of how we do these distributions? One thing that I've thought about is SMS messages. Maybe you SMS somewhere and it sends you back a bridge address. And maybe that's per phone number or per something like that. So let me know what you think. One of the great things here is that I'm finally in the role of the attacker. I don't have to defend against every possible attack. I just have to make one that works. So if you're going to see George's talk later on, George Genizis, on how to do traffic analysis, things like that, all he has to do is break it somehow. I have to defend against everything with Tor. So finally we switch the roles around and I can attack something, and I just have to come up with one of these strategies that works. If the email list works, then we're all set. We've done it, and there are going to be tens of thousands of people using Tor in China, and it'll be hard to block them. Whereas China has to figure out how to defend against every one of these. They have to decide how to allocate their resources. And it's not just China. Symantec has to figure out how to allocate their 3 sysadmins to attack all of these different strategies and figure out how to keep the poor employees from having good security on the internet. So So the key point here is that by deploying all of them, we make all of them more likely to succeed, because we're going to distract the attacker with all these other ones that maybe he can break, but he has to think about breaking those as well as all the other ones. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so one of the big problems is, how do we learn if a bridge has been blocked? Because maybe I have a lot of people signing up bridges, and maybe some adversaries are learning about them and putting them on their blacklists. Do I give out ones that are blocked? Do I give out ones that are not blocked? How do I even know? I'm not in China. I haven't used it. So one answer is active testing. I should have a bunch of users in China, in Thailand, in all these different countries and corporations that do the testing for me. I give them a list of bridges. They say, yeah, I could connect to these 3. I couldn't connect to these 3. Now you know. That's great, but shouldn't the adversary sign up users? And then I'll say, hey, what do you think about these 12 bridges? And he'll say, oh yeah, those are fine. And then he'll put them on his blacklist. So how do I pick users in China to actually do this measurement for me? And even if we have trusted users that we know are good, the adversary is going to figure it out eventually. He's going to say, that guy over there keeps measuring the whole internet. I should keep track of what he's trying to connect to, and now I get to learn all the bridges. So it's a start, but it has some problems. Another approach is passive testing. Each of the bridges comes with a little 2 megabyte GeoIP database. It knows when somebody connects, this guy's connecting from Syria, this guy's connecting from Egypt, this guy's connecting from China. There are some anonymity issues here if it publishes all the IP addresses of the people that it sees. But maybe once a day it says, I got 27 connections from Syria, I got 3,000 connections from China, I got 0 connections from Uzbekistan. So it's a start. It'll give us some notion. If maybe we get a lot of connections from a certain country and then no connections from a certain country, then we can start to say, I bet they're attacking. I bet they're trying to figure out bridges and blocking them. On the other hand, if we get no connections from Burma for 2 days, does that mean that they're just asleep in Burma and they're not trying to use it? Or does that mean that Burma actually blocked all of the bridges that we gave them? So it gets hard to figure that out too. So the solution that we'll probably end up with is a combination. We want to use active testing, and we want to do this passive GeoIP measurement to try to get some intuition. And I don't really know how to combine these, so if you already know how to do this, come chat with me afterwards. Okay, all the other fun issues that come up. One of the interesting things here, a lot of people make the assumption that as oppression gets worse in a country, as they start to filter more things and censor more things, it becomes more and more dangerous to use Tor. I'm not convinced of this, because from what I've seen, as the oppression becomes worse, there are more and more Tor users in that country. And they're not using it because they want to organize protests and dissidents and stuff. They're using it because they can't get to the websites they used to be able to get to. They want to read their weblogs and their webcomics, and they want to shop on Amazon like they did last week. They're just ordinary people on the internet who are using Tor because they're forced to use Tor. So as the oppression gets worse in a country, the median use, the ordinary user, becomes more acceptable. So this is an unintuitive thing that it's worth thinking about. Tor actually becomes more acceptable as the country cracks down more and more. And then a big open question, trusting local hardware and software. In certain countries, they don't all have new IBM laptops that they bought. They have the cafe in the village that you go to. And boy, is there a video camera in that internet cafe. And even if there isn't, it's a Windows 98 computer, and a bunch of people have used it before Alice shows up. How can she really trust that this thing is running Tor? How can she really trust anything at this point? So one answer is maybe a USB stick that has a little program on it that we've analyzed and documented and we can trust. Maybe another answer is a live CD. She shows up and she pops in her Ubuntu Tor disk and she's on her way. It really depends a lot on the hardware we're looking at. Another big question, how many bridges do you need to know about? Obviously, if you know about one, that works as long as that one bridge is around. Yes, maybe the adversary can block it, but even ignoring that, Comcast systems go down. Helpful volunteers who are Tor users Their computers disappear, they turn them off, they catch fire, lots of things happen. And one might not be enough. Is 2 enough? Is 6 enough? What is the rate of churn of these volunteers that we might have? And how do we figure out how to change that adaptively so that we can give people enough bridges? And then the other half is, even if you know about 8 bridges, how often should you look for updates? Should you go to the bridge authority every minute to say, is there a new one now? Is there a new one now? Or do you go there once a day? Is that too infrequent? I don't know. And then another big piece is cable modems don't usually run big websites. So China doesn't have to block the whole internet. They can just say, all those Comcast users, they're useless. No connections to Comcast. All those broadband users in Germany, they don't run actual websites. No connections to those. And maybe this will be where all our volunteers come from. And if that's true, we're in bad shape. So one answer is we need to get Google and AOL and lots of other places like that to run bridges also. We also need to think a little bit about economic pressure. Maybe China goes to Verizon and says, your users are endangering our political system. Can you please make them stop? And now Verizon starts having a no Tor bridges policy. So this gets political very quickly, but hopefully that will be solvable too. Another big question. Publicity attracts attention. We talked earlier about how they only end up filtering things that are well publicized or well used. So a lot of circumvention tools launch with a huge media splash. They have New York Times articles saying, we just wrote a new tool and it'll be great, we're going to solve everything. Bad publicity attracts the attention of the censors, and they're forced to block it. Even if it doesn't work very well, even if nobody's using it, they have to act because the daughter of the general is saying, Daddy, I hear that we're not blocking the internet very well today. What's going on there? And then he has to do something about it. So the key point here is that we can control the pace of the arms race. We can decide how embarrassed the Chinese officials are, and that will force them to act or force them to not need to act yet. So one of the key points here is I don't want New York Times articles about this, probably ever. I think the key approach is to give it to individuals and say, here are some bridges, you can use them, tell your friends, but don't tell the press. Hopefully I haven't made a huge mistake by coming here to tell you guys my idea. If you have any ideas about how to break this or fix it or make it better, please let me know. It's still in the design phase, so there's a lot that can be fixed and there's a lot more work that needs to be done. So the next steps, technical solutions aren't going to solve the whole problem. These things are really effective socially. It isn't that there are a lot of people in China saying, man, I wish I could get to the real internet. It's a shame that my country doesn't let me. There are a lot of people in China saying, good thing my country censors the internet, otherwise I'd be seeing all that bad stuff that I don't really want to look at. And as long as socially they're succeeding, as long as most people in these countries say, good thing my internet is censored, then it's not entirely a technical problem. On the other hand, we really do need a technical solution for that piece of it. We need a good answer for the technical piece, because there are people who want censorship resistance. There are people who want to be able to get around the firewall, and we want to make it as easy as possible for them. Maybe they'll tell their friends. Who knows what happens after that. So the next steps are we need to deploy all of this stuff, build it, deploy it, see what happens, try the discovery strategies I talked about, try the strategies you're going to tell me about tomorrow, and get some intuition for how these things work. And I should also notice that Tor itself needs to keep going. There's an ongoing discussion around the world with law enforcement and corporations and other things like that, where a lot of people say, I don't have anything to hide. Why should we have these tools on the internet? Yeah, you're letting the folks at Indie Media not get arrested, but anonymity is bad and we need to turn it all off. So there are a lot of discussions that we have at a lot of different levels in government and different policy groups on why we need security on the internet. Another big issue is data retention. If I weren't working full-time on building Tor, I'd be working full-time on fighting data retention. This is a huge issue, and Europe is the place where it is right now. not only does it threaten the privacy and safety of the ordinary people and the corporations and the governments that are trying to